Hello everybody and welcome to VFR. Today we are taking a quick and kind of relaxed break from air racing to do a quick GA flight down here in central North Carolina. We are at Cox Private Airport with some custom scenery from FlightSim.to and the C81. And we're taking this T-6 Texan, a new airplane we picked up and recently bought. We're going to be flying this thing on down to Mid-Carolina Regional Airport, Romeo Uniform, Quebec, to get it a much needed, for our purposes, new paint job. So join us along the way. We're going to talk a little bit about the Texan and a little bit about how I find good, fun, general aviation flights to fly that get me engaged in that, because it's a little bit different, a little bit tougher sometimes than just flying airline routes. So we'll get this thing all set up and get on the roll. Alright, so welcome into the cockpit of the Texan. And for those of you that don't know, this comes with the Reno Air Races expansion that came out recently for Flight Sim. This is just one of the ones from the base package that you get. It comes with multiple liveries, and we're just running one of the blue ones for now. But this is the default. It comes with a nice kind of classic World War II vintage cockpit. And yeah, it's a nicely modeled, good stuff. I did get one premium airplane, almost perfect, mostly because of the Navy paint scheme. But we're going to fly this one around and figure out what kind of skin we're going to go for with it. But we're going to take it over to the paint shop and get that all set up. All the gauges are going to be in front of us, and we're already started up. But we do have radios down here, and for fun, we can tune at 22.8. All right, so winds are variable about 4 knots. We've got a high ceiling. Time has been moved back to the daylight. And yeah, so we're just going to taxi on out behind us, take off on the runway. We'll use probably 1 knock of flaps. We're going to depart out to the west, heading 275 for 81 miles. I'm going to use my EFB SimTech Toolkit Pro mostly to navigate. And we'll also just keep an eye on that. We'll try and stay on that heading, but we'll look at that map to make sure we're on the right track. We do have some airspace to worry about. Once we get in close, we'll probably be landing on runway 2. So the Charlotte class Bravo airspace is going to be right to our south. We will be below it. We have a it goes from 6,000 to 10,000 feet, so we'll be below the shelf. But if we get too high, that'll be something to consider. We'll be cruising about 2,000 feet today. This plane is a joy to fly, and it is it's a lot of fun. It's one of the reasons I was really excited for that Reno Air Races was in large part the T6. To me, it's one of the best looking warbirds. It's one of the most common, most popular ones. And it is really fun to fly. It's not going to be as fast as your Mustang, your P-51, certainly not as the jets. I think it probably beats the biplanes, but maybe not. It is somewhat stately. But it is just good fun to fly. It's good fun to land. And especially if you go between P-51 and this, you will notice we got a little bit of water here. So I guess that's the end of the runway. We'll line ourselves up on the runway, holding back pressure as we brake, because this is a tail dragger, and you'll smack your prop down on the ground if you're not careful. I'm just going to bump my seat up a little bit, and we'll go 1 level of flaps. So I'm going to hold on the brakes, go most power, slowly bring power up. We will go ahead and release the power. I do not know what rotate speed in the Texan is. Let's look it up. Okay, so after consulting a little bit of Googling and finding a flight sim manual from another Texan, so who knows, we'll be aiming for about 115 knots. We're going to just go to about 32.5 inches of manifold of mercury in the manifold pressure. And yeah, we will see. So holding on the brakes, we're going to bring the power forward. Releasing the brakes. They're off. Try not to hit the cub over there or the tree. And we're away. So flying general aviation in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it's really fun. It's one of the things the sim excels at. I mean, really, this altitude, 2,000 feet, looks great, feels great. I'll come back on the power just a touch. Level off at 2,000 feet. Looks great, it feels great. And it is just a lot of fun. It's really, in many ways, one of the optimal simulators for that kind of experience, just because of the visual quality outside. I mean, you just load in and then this is what you get. Still, there can be a sense of, I don't know, aimlessness, especially when it comes to GA flying. You're not necessarily as plugged into stuff like VATSIM. You can still use it, but you're not going between major international airports usually. You can, but usually you're not. There's not common popular routes. ATC coverage isn't that big of a deal. Even this flight, if we were on VATSIM right now, we wouldn't necessarily, we might get flight following, but we don't have to talk to anybody. We're in uncontrolled airspace. So, how do you decide where to fly? How do you get the excuse to dust off your Texan or the Mooney or something like that, right? And I'm interested to hear other people's thoughts on this. This is just kind of what I do when I feel like I'm kind of looking to scratch that general aviation itch. I just want to fly somewhere short and scenic, relatively. And I think the first question you have to ask yourself is, are you a more realistic person or are you more of an exploratory person when it comes to flying? I tend to err more realistic. It's funny, you have the entire world modeled in your, you have the entire world modeled at your fingertips, and I tend to fly places that I know or have been or see, because that's, what you do when you have the whole world modeled. That's not necessarily for everybody. So it's also fun to go fly strange places. I just find it's harder to maintain any sense of realism or anything like that, for what that's worth. If that's not important to you, then you just love flying places that are different, exploring, that's really cool too, and I do enjoy that as well. It's not an either-or thing. You can do both. But in terms of realistic options, just flying around, your area or your areas, there are a few things that you can do to, I don't know, some excuses to get out and fly. The first thing, I mean, obviously, this is kind of what I was thinking about when we did this, made this plan. But airplanes have maintenance, airplanes need upgrades, and someone has to do that work, and it's not always at the airport you're at, right? So they might not have a paint shop at the private airstrip at NC-81. But we're going down to Salisbury where they do have one, based on a quick Google search. And I mean, all this stuff, it's a crazy time to be alive. All this stuff is available on the internet. So if you want to know paint shops near you or aircraft maintenance near you, you can look it up. So you have to fly these airplanes. They don't teleport there, or I guess you could strip them down and drive them, but that's not usually cost effective. And I mean, airplanes don't teleport when you buy them or when you upgrade them or when they need work done. So that's one thing you do: find places to fly, find excuses to fly. Just think about what airplane maintenance needs to happen. Think about other possible, excuses for flying other destinations that you wouldn't maybe want to go as a GA pilot. And the other thing, common to do in an area that you know well, is find some common beach or mountain trips. That's a big part of general aviation flying in real life, is going to the beach or going to mountains or going to some kind of scenic area. So it could be a fun way to learn more about the local area, whether you live there, know there well, or just like flying there. You can learn a little bit more about it by finding out where real general aviation pilots tend to go. The last one you can do is a joyride. There's nothing wrong with firing it up and training, and arguably that's probably what a lot, I don't know about the majority, but possibly. General aviation flights don't go anywhere at all. You're going up, you might do some maneuvers, you might look up some different maneuvers that you can practice, like in the T-6, you could do some basic aerobatics, you could do some rolls, minimal stuff like that. Or you can just do touch and goes. Really, I mean, that's a fun way, especially if you have been flying an airplane a long time and you want to understand how it handles better. Going up for a day, set the weather to something nice, give yourself a sunset or a nice looking day, and go do some touch and goes. Or go fly out to a scenic point and then come back, practice your landings. Another thing to help with this, or it's kind of a house rule, is you can think of your airplane as being persistent. As in, it is where you leave it. I don't usually do this, but you can, and it is fun because then if you want to go somewhere, you have to fly all the way there. So if I wanted to take my Texan, say, to Reno to maybe compete in some kind of air race or something, I'd have to fly across the country, and that would be kind of a fun multi-leg trip that you could do. And that gets us kind of nicely into the second thing that I think you can do. That's a lot of fun: grand tours. And this is not necessarily restricted to general aviation, but picking a themed or some kind of itinerary where you're going to travel across a good chunk of time and distance. And usually it's a scenic route. I think I've done the Rhine River in Europe, across the Great Lakes from, I think, Quebec to, where did we end up? Duluth, Minnesota. Kind of hopping along that way. So, I mean, rivers, lakes, you could fly up and down the Atlantic coast. I've been meaning to start my U.S. East Coast trip all on VATSIM to give myself an extra planning challenge. And if you need more restrictions, you want those restrictions enforced, VATSIM is a good option for that, right? You can't just fly wherever you want with nothing. You have to actually pay attention to where your airspaces are. The other way to look at it, you could do a destination flight. We could go from here in central North Carolina out to Grand Canyon, or to Mount Rushmore, or to your childhood home, right? It doesn't really matter. But that's a good way to think about a multi-leg flight. And again, usually these are multi-leg. I like to do them an hour, but you can tailor it to however long you want to fly. If you like to fly 2 or 3 hours at a time, find airports 2 or 3 hours apart. It's a good way to do it. I'm going to see what... The last idea is to get social. There are a lot of flight sim groups that'll do things like fly-ins or events where people get together and fly. Some of these are for clubs I've seen. Others are more open and to the public, like bush divers. They'll fly bush trips with everybody flying from one small airstrip to another. VATSIM also does this. You'll find sometimes more regional general aviation themed VATSIM events. I generally look in the United States because that's where I fly on VAT USA, but check your local VATSIM for any fun general aviation flights. That can be a good reason to dust off your favorite GA airplane. And those are just some of the ways I try to motivate myself to fly GA and give it some purpose. It's not as easy as the airliners because, and it has unique challenges, but it's just not as easy when you don't fire it up and you don't see, oh, Washington Center's online, let me go fly from DCA to Philadelphia or something. So we're going to keep on cruising. We'll start looking for the airport here pretty soon. I should have done a better job navigating. So quick visual reference, the highway in front of us is going to go out into a bit of a V, and that's how we're going to keep going straight where the straight in between the two legs of the V. And that's kind of how we're judging where exactly we're at. To our north, it looks like is Route 64. I don't know what the southern route is. It's not obvious to me from the chart. Alright, so we're about to cross over High Rock Lake. That's one of the last big visual references that I have before we hit Salisbury. I anticipate the airport should be off to our nose, maybe off to our left, just a little bit. It is just south and west of the town itself. So if we see the town, Salisbury would be south and west. Now we're going to plan to enter 45 to the downwind for runway 2. We'll make a right downwind. Let me pull up the chart. Yeah, runway 2 elevation of 769 feet. We are currently cruising at about 2,700 feet. So we're good on the altitude, just in case we get a little close to Charlotte. The class Charlie is going to be right to our south at 6,000 feet. So as long as you stay below 6,000 feet, we'll be below the shelf. So landing the T-6 is going to be much tamer than the landing something like the P-51. We're going to shoot for we'll shoot for a two-wheel landing, and then we'll just let the tail wheel come down. I like to practice both ways, especially in this airplane where it's a little bit more forgiving than the P-51. And we are showing the winds are about 6 knots, 340. So we'll stick with runway 2. Alright, so we should have filled just off our nose. You can kind of see it. The longer thing running out in front of us. Coming back on the power a little bit. We want to be about 1,700 feet. So we'll just begin a gentle descent. And again, we'll be joining the right downwind for runway 2. Mid-Carolina traffic, Texan 48 Echo is entering the right downwind by the 45 to land full stop runway 2, Mid-Carolina. And we will keep descending with the town of Salisbury, North Carolina off our right. Charlotte is going to be that way. I'm going to start turning in now, just a little bit. And then we'll turn to a heading of 200. 200. That's about 1800. I'm going to just add a little power to keep us in the groove. We're going to make a left turn now. And that highway is going to be, not exactly, but kind of roughly in line with where our downwind's going to be. It'll be a little wide, but that's okay. Mid-Carolina traffic, Texan 48 Echo is on the right downwind to land, runway 2 full stop, Mid-Carolina. I'll bring the power back, let the speed come down a little bit, and get the gear out. And there's the field. We'll go ahead and give 1 notch of flaps. And just try to maintain our altitude for now. Mid-Carolina traffic, Texan 48 Echoes, right base to land, runway 2 full stop, Mid-Carolina. Alright, we have the field. A bit of a sloppy base. We'll come back on the power a little bit more and keep descending. Should have plenty of runway to work with. But if for whatever reason we're hitting the halfway point, we will go full power, bring flaps up, and go around. Mid-Carolina traffic, Texan 48 Echo is on final land, runway 2 full stop, Mid-Carolina. We're a bit high, but it's, especially compared to its cousin, very docile. And you still have pretty good lift here at low speed. We're about over the threshold, cutting the power. Little bounce. And we got a little off center line there. I'm not going to force it to do anything. I'm not on the brakes or anything. Alright, and we'll taxi on up. We're going to taxi again and pull over to hotel. We'll taxi down to hotel, and then we'll come back to the hangars. Alright, welcome here to Mid-Carolina Regional Airport. We're here with our T-6 Texan. We're going to get it into the paint shop and looking just a little bit more authentic, especially for the classic cockpit version. Hope you enjoyed this flight and some of the ramblings included herein. As always, if you have any questions, comments, things that you like to do to convince yourself to fly general aviation, drop them in the comments section below. This has been VFR. Take it easy, y'all.